In the small town of Springfield, Missouri, there was a guy named Jake. He was 25 years old and had spent his entire life with his mother, Mary. Jake was an only child, and after his father died when he was a child, his bond with his mother became inseparable. Jake made all his decisions in consultation with her and never felt the need to seek the company of anyone else. One evening, Mary felt sick and had to call a doctor at home. A nurse named Cindy came to the house with the doctor. She was a young, kind and friendly girl. She helped Mary, and while she was working, her eyes lingered on Jake more than once. Mary, seeing this, could not help but say to her son later, "Jake, did you notice the way that girl was looking at you?" "Yes, Mom, but..." Jake stopped and looked down and added, "I'm not ready for a relationship yet." Mary decided not to push, but she already had a plan. A few days later, she pretended to be sick again. Jake, scared for his mom, called the doctor again. Just like the first time, Cindy arrived. This time, Mary seized the moment. After she was examined and made sure that nothing serious was wrong, she turned to Cindy. "You've been so good to us, Cindy. You know, my son Jake is a great guy, but he's very shy. Would you mind getting to know him a little bit?" Cindy smiled and turned to Jake and said, "How about we go for coffee somewhere in town?" Jake was embarrassed, but agreed. However, it took a few more weeks before he decided to take a more active step. He was nervous, didn't know how to behave, and even wanted to give up on the idea of continuing to communicate several times. But Cindy was persistent and determined. She didn't wait for Jake to make up his mind and asked him out on a date herself. "Listen, Jake," she said, looking him straight in the eye, "I know you're not used to all this. But I can see that you're special. Let's just spend time together, without any expectations." Although nervous, Jake felt that he trusted her. That coffee in a small cafe in downtown Springfield was the beginning of their story. Step by step, Jake discovered a new world, thanks to Cindy, who was not afraid to take the initiative. Jake and Cindy started meeting regularly. It was a completely new experience for Jake. He had never been on a date before, had never given flowers, and didn't know how to hold a conversation. Cindy, on the other hand, was confident and calm. She realized that Jake needed time and patiently helped him learn. One evening, while sitting on a bench in the city park, Cindy asked a question that made Jake think. "Jake, you've always lived with your mom. What do you want out of life? What do you dream about?" Jake fell silent. He had never thought about his dreams before. His life had always revolved around taking care of his mom. After a few minutes of silence, he answered, "I think I've always wanted to be a writer. I love making up stories, but I never believed it could become anything more." Cindy smiled. "Well, why don't you give it a try? We have a writing club in town. We could go together." Jake was hesitant at first, but Cindy convinced him. The next week, they went to the club meeting. It was the first time Jake shared his stories with others, and surprisingly, they were admired. It inspired him. Over time, Jake began to spend less time at home and more time writing and spending time with Cindy. Mary watched this with a warm heart. She realized that her son had finally found himself. One evening, as he and Cindy were walking through the streets of Springfield, Jake suddenly stopped. He looked a little nervous, but the confidence in his eyes surprised Cindy. "Cindy," he began, "I have something important to tell you. You have changed my life. You've shown me that there's more to the world outside my home than I thought. And I want you to be with me always." Cindy stopped and looked at him with a smile. "Jake, you've changed my life, too. I have never met anyone so genuine and kind." That was the first moment Jake realized he was finally ready for something more. Their relationship grew even stronger, and a few months later Jake proposed, which Cindy gladly accepted. They stayed to live in Springfield, where Jake became a famous writer. He wrote books inspired by their story, and Cindy continued to work as a nurse, helping others as she had once helped him. Although Jake had never forgotten his mother, he now knew that life could be lived differently fully, with love and dreams that come true. After they got married, Jake and Cindy decided to take their time with big changes in their lives. They settled in a cozy house near Mary's home so that Jake could continue to take care of his mother, but also build his life. Mary was very happy for her son. She became a frequent visitor to their home, but tried not to interfere in their affairs. Her heart was at ease because Jake was happy, and that was her main dream. Jake continued to write, and his first book, an autobiographical novel about the complexities of growing up and his relationship with his parents, was a huge success. Readers could feel the sincerity in every word, and it brought him popularity. He began to be invited to literary events, and Jake even appeared on local radio stations to share his story. Cindy, who has always supported Jake, has become not only his wife but also his best friend. She helped him organize book signings, and even suggested ideas for new books. Her determination and energy have always pushed Jake to grow. One day, after returning home from a literary festival, Jake decided to talk to Mary. He knew that his mother was used to their close bond, and he was worried about how she would feel now that his life had changed. "Mom," he said as he sat down next to her in her cozy living room, "I want you to know that no matter how much my life changes, you will always be important to me." Mary smiled and hugged her son. "Jake, I've always wanted you to be happy. Cindy is your compass, and you finally found your way. And I'm just happy to be here for you." A few years later, their family grew larger. Jake and Cindy had a daughter, whom they named Lily. For the first time in his life, Jake felt like a real father and realized how important his connection with his mom was. He decided that he wanted to raise Lily in love and freedom, so that she would have the courage to follow her own path. Cindy and Jake have become an example to many in Springfield. Their love and mutual respect have helped them build a happy life full of dreams, family warmth, and support. And although Mary was no longer a central figure in Jake's life, she always remained the one who laid the foundation for his strength and kindness. And Jake continued to write. His new books told not only about his experiences, but also about his family, his belief in himself, and that any change begins with love. Lily grew up a curious and bright girl. She inherited determination from Cindy and imagination and a love of stories from Jake. At the age of 5, Lily first asked her dad to tell her a story he hadn't written yet. Jake hesitated for a long time, but then decided to create a magical fairy tale for her about a little girl who went in search of a star that fell from the sky. This fairy tale became the basis for his new children's book, which he dedicated to Lily. The book was a huge success, and suddenly Jake became not only a popular novelist, but also a well-known author of children's literature. He began receiving invitations to speak at schools and libraries, reading his stories to children. However, life was not always cloudless. One day Mary fell ill and doctors diagnosed her with a serious heart condition. This came as a big shock to Jake. He had always seen his mom as strong, but now she needed his support. Cindy became the one who took on the role of support for the whole family. She convinced Jake that they could get through this together and helped organize the best treatment for Mary. Although these were difficult times, they brought the family even closer together. Despite her illness, Mary remained strong in spirit. She continued to be an inspiration to Jake and Cindy, even spending time with Lily, telling her stories from her childhood. After a year of treatment, Mary's condition stabilized. She returned to her quiet but joyful life. On the day of her 70th birthday, Jake organized a surprise, a small celebration where he presented his new book. This book was about a mother and son who learned to let go, but remain connected forever. "This book is for you, Mom," Jake said as he handed her the first copy. Mary could not hold back her tears. She knew that she had fulfilled her mission in life, to raise a son who had found his place in this world. In the years that followed, Jake and Cindy continued to build their lives. Lily grew up and decided to follow in her father's footsteps by starting to write her own stories. Jake proudly supported her, passing on all the lessons he had learned. Although Mary passed away a few years later, her spirit remained with the family. In every book Jake read, in every smile Lily gave, in every action Cindy took, her wisdom and love were felt. This story was a reminder that love and support can change lives, even if the path to change seems long and difficult. And in that little house in Springfield, Jake's family left their mark on each other and those they inspired with their stories forever. Lily continued to grow up in an atmosphere of love and creativity. In high school, she won a Young Writers Contest with her first story, which was about the friendship between a girl and a mysterious talking tree. Her parents were incredibly proud, and Jake even helped her publish a small edition of the book for the local library. Meanwhile, Jake and Cindy discovered a new direction in their lives. Inspired by Lily's success, they decided to found a literary center in Springfield where children and teens could learn to write, share their work, and receive support. The place became popular with young people, and even adults joined the courses. One day, a journalist from a major publishing house visited the literary center to prepare an article about the impact of literature on communities. She spent several days with Jake's family, watching them inspire others. Her article was widely publicized, and it brought attention to Springfield. This publicity changed the family's life. The Literary Center received grants for development, and Jake began receiving invitations to speak in other cities. Cindy took over the management of the center so that Jake could focus on his writing and supporting Lily. However, with success came new challenges. Jake, who had always appreciated the comfort of his hometown, felt a little lost in the big world. One evening, after returning from another conference, he shared his feelings with Cindy. "I feel like I'm moving away from what's most important to me. I don't want to write for the crowd. I want to write for you, for our family, for Lily, for the people I know." Cindy supported him. "You can always go back to your roots, Jake. Your books have an impact because they're real. But if you need more time at home, we'll find a way to make it work." Jake decided to return to a quieter life. He spent more time with his family and working with the local community, leaving the big stage behind. Instead, he wrote books that became even more personal and warm. Lily, meanwhile, graduated from high school and went to university to study literature and art. She would often call her parents to share her ideas and even consult with her father about her manuscripts. As the years went by, a new member of the family appeared. Lily gave birth to her own daughter, whom she named after her grandmother, Mary. Jake and Cindy were now happy grandparents, passing on their love of stories to little Mary. In this way, Jake's family became a symbol of how love, creativity and support can change not only one family, but an entire community. And although their life paths developed in different directions, they always stayed together, strong, inspired and ready to share their story with others. Little Mary quickly became the center of attention for the whole family. Jake and Cindy spent a lot of time with their granddaughter, reading her stories and making up new stories together. Lily, seeing her daughter growing up in an atmosphere of love and creativity, remembered her childhood and realized how important her parents' lessons were to her. Mary, although still very young, demonstrated a vivid imagination. One day she asked her grandfather Jake to help her write a real book. Jake was so excited by the idea that together they created an illustrated story about the adventures of a girl looking for friends among the stars. Lily helped design the book, and Cindy helped organize its printing. This edition was a gift for Mary on her 6th birthday. At the same time, the Springfield Literary Center was becoming increasingly popular. Its activities inspired not only local residents but also people outside the city. Thanks to the center, many children discovered literature, and teenagers and adults found a way to express themselves through writing their own stories. One day, Lily came to the center with little Mary. The girl, looking around in confusion, saw a board with children's drawings and story fragments on it. She came closer and proudly added her drawing with the caption, "This is me and my grandfather looking for stars." This moment became a symbol of generational continuity in their family. Jake watched his granddaughter with a smile and felt that his life had a deep meaning. However, it was not always easy for the family. One day, Jake felt weak and, on Cindy's advice, went to the doctor. The diagnosis was serious heart problems. Jake knew it was a challenge, but he didn't want his family to be plunged into anxiety. "I've been writing about hope my whole life," he told Cindy. "Now it's time to live by my words." The treatment took a long time, and his family supported him every step of the way. Lily took over some of the work at the Literary Center, and Cindy was by his side as always. Despite the difficulties, Jake continued to write, even from his hospital bed. His last book was a real message to his family and everyone he inspired with his life. It told the story of the value of love, the power of support, and how each person can leave their mark on the hearts of others. Jake lived a few more years filled with creativity and family warmth. After his death, Lily and Cindy decided to keep his legacy alive by continuing to develop the Literary Center and publishing a series of his unpublished works. Little Mary grew up continuing her grandfather's work. She became a writer who wrote for children, and often recalled how it all began with their evenings on the porch, when Jake would tell her about the stars. Although Jake was no longer with us, his stories lived on. They became part of the lives of his family, his community, and all those who found inspiration in them. Mary, Jake's granddaughter, has achieved great success in writing. Her books for children have become popular not only in Springfield, but across the country. She always emphasized that her grandfather was her main inspiration. In each interview, Mary told stories from her childhood, how Jake taught her to see the magic in ordinary things, and how he wrote stories for her that are still her favorite. Eventually, Mary decided to return to Springfield to continue her family's legacy. She took over the leadership of the Literary Center, which became a local legend. The center organized major festivals, workshops, and even ran scholarship programs for young writers. One day, while sorting through old things at Cindy's grandmother's house, Mary found a box of Jake's manuscripts that he never had time to finish. These manuscripts contained stories about his own life, the difficulties of growing up, love, and family ties. It was like a message from the past, and Mary felt it was her mission to complete these stories. She immersed herself in the work, studying every page, adding her own ideas to the stories, but leaving Jake's style intact. A year later, this collection was published under the title Messages from the Stars, and became one of the most successful books of the year. People read these stories and saw them as reflections of their lives, their dreams and fears. After the book's publication, Springfield organized a memorial evening for Jake. The entire city center was decorated with quotes from his works, and an open-air celebration was organized around the Literary Center. Cindy, who was already of age, sat in a chair in the central square and watched everything with pride. She saw how her husband's legacy lives on through their granddaughter and all those Jake inspired. As Mary spoke on stage, she addressed the community. "My grandfather taught me that every person has a story that deserves to be heard. He said that the most important thing is to leave the world a little better than it was. Today I see his dream coming true." The evening ended under a starry sky. People lit candles and left them around the Literary Center as a symbol of the light that Jake brought to their lives. Since then, Messages from the Stars has become a traditional book read by families in Springfield. The Literary Center was named after Jake, and Mary continued to carry his legacy forward, telling new stories and inspiring a new generation of writers. And although Jake was gone, his words and love remained alive in every corner of this small town and in the hearts of those who believe that magic exists in even the simplest things. Several decades later, Jake's legacy has become part of the culture not only of Springfield, but of the entire country. The Literary Center, now called the Jake Ryan House, became a place where young writers from all over the world came to visit. Every year, it hosted an international literature festival, where the Jake Prize for the Best Debut Novel was awarded. Mary, already an adult and experienced writer, became not only the keeper of the family heritage, but also a leading figure in contemporary literature. She wrote books that remained on the bestseller lists, but always remembered that her mission was to help others find their voice. One day, while walking through the old house that belonged to her grandmother Cindy, Mary stopped at an old bookshelf. She found a yellowed photo album filled with pictures of her childhood, her mother Lily's youth, and Jake and Cindy's early years. Mary looked closely at the photos until she found one in particular, Jake sitting under a tree in the yard of their house, with little Mary holding his notebook next to him. It moved her to tears. She realized that although the stories of her grandfather and his life had already been told, there was another story worth writing, their family saga. Mary began working on a book called Our Roots Among the Stars. It was the story of several generations of her family, starting with Jake and Cindy, through Lily, and down to her and little Mary, who was now grown and had a family of her own. In the book, Mary explored how the love and support of one person can become the foundation for something bigger, for creating a legacy that changes the lives of others. The book was a huge success. People have cried and laughed while reading it, finding in each page a reflection of their own lives. For many, it was a reminder of the importance of family ties, and how stories can preserve what matters most. To celebrate the book's release, Mary spoke to a large audience in Springfield. She stood on a stage under a starry sky, in the same place where her grandfather once presented his last book. "This story is not just about our family," Mary said, "it's about each of us. It's about how love of words, people and the world can leave behind something bigger than ourselves." When Mary finished her speech, fireworks lit up the sky and the audience lit thousands of lanterns that flew into the air, reminiscent of the very stars that inspired Jake. That night became a symbol of a new beginning for everyone who was there. And though time passed, the memory of Jake, Cindy, Lily, and all their stories remained alive, lighting the way for those who were looking for their own star in the sky. A few years after Our Roots Among the Stars was published, Mary received a letter from a young writer named Sam. In it, he thanked her for her inspiration and told her how her book helped him believe in himself. Sam wrote that he grew up in a small town like Springfield and always wanted to write, but never believed his voice was important. Mary, touched by this letter, invited Sam to Springfield for a summer workshop at the Literary Center. He arrived, and although he was shy, he immediately felt the support and warmth of the local community. Sam began to share his stories, which touched many people. Mary saw in him a part of her grandfather, the same passion for life and desire to share his inner world. Together with Sam, she decided to launch a new project, the Young Voices platform, which helped talented authors from small towns gain access to training, editorial support, and publication. The project quickly gained popularity, and in 2 years, several new writers who participated in the program published their first books. One of these books was Sam's own story, which told of his life, struggle with doubts, and search for his own voice. The book was called The Way Home and was dedicated to Mary and her family. It reminded us that even one good deed or a warm word can change someone's life. Cindy, who was already very old, still attended the Literary Center's events. She watched as her family's work inspired more and more people and couldn't help but smile. One day she said to Mary, "You would have made Jake incredibly proud." When Cindy passed away, the entire community came together to honor her memory. They named one of the auditoriums at the Literary Center in her honor, the Cindy Ryan Hall of Inspiration. Mary, although she missed her grandmother, continued to look forward. She wrote a new book, which became another bestseller, and created a series of documentaries about the lives of people who changed their lives thanks to the Literary Center. Sam, who became her close friend and work partner, told her once, "This is more than a legacy. It's a movement that you created with Jake and Cindy. And it's a movement that will live on forever." Springfield, once an ordinary small town, has now become a symbol of the power of stories and their ability to change the world. And as time passed, the light lit by Jake and his family continued to shine, reminding everyone that every story is a star that deserves to shine. Time passed inexorably, but the legacy of Jake and his family never faded. Over the years, the Literary Center has become even more famous, attracting the attention of not only locals, but also international literary figures. Mary, already an accomplished writer, continued to lead the center and run programs for young talent. By her example, she showed how one can live in a world where dreams can come true if one only has faith and determination. One day, at a festival, Mary met a young writer named Catherine. She was from Boston and grew up in difficult circumstances, but thanks to her love of books, she found the strength to overcome the difficulties. Her novel, which she presented at the festival, was a story about a girl who sought to find her place in the world, overcoming numerous barriers. Impressed by her talent, Mary invited Catherine to join the Young Voices platform program. They quickly became friends, and Catherine often came to Springfield to meet with other program participants. Mary saw her potential and decided to help her publish her first book. Meanwhile, the Literary Center launched a new initiative called City of Writers. It was a project that brought together local authors from all over the country to create a community where everyone could find support and inspiration for their work. This project became a real explosion in the literary environment, and not only writers, but also readers from different cities began to come to Springfield, wanting to be part of this unique atmosphere. Years later, however, there came a time when Mary began to feel that her mission was not yet complete. She wondered what would happen after she left the Literary Center. Her heart and mind never stopped striving to help even more people find their story, their star. So, after a few years of working at the center, she decided to create a non-profit organization that would support writers who are unable to publish their work due to financial difficulties. Mary received support from many people, but what impressed her most was the way the Springfield community responded to her idea. Local residents organized various charity events to raise funds to support the project. They helped to create a fund that allowed them to publish dozens of books by young authors from around the world. One day, sitting in the office of the Literary Center, Mary looked at the old photographs she had collected over the years and realized that all these stories, from Jake to Catherine, were part of something big. They were part of a cultural movement that not only changed their city, but inspired a whole generation of people. The stories of Jake, Cindy, Lily, Sam, and Catherine now live on in every corner of the country. They have become symbols of the fact that even the most difficult moments in life can be overcome if only there are people who are willing to help each other. The Ryan family's legacy has become a beacon for those looking for their purpose, their dream, their star. In Springfield, where it all began, the evenings now not only featured literary events, but also master classes, opening up new horizons for writers. Mary found her place in this world, and her story, like the stories of those she supported, became one big book that will be read for generations to come. Years later, Springfield has become not only a city where great stories are born, but also a place where a culture of creativity and support flourishes. The Literary Center, named after Jake Ryan, becomes a true center of inspiration for writers, artists, and creatives from across the country. Mary, who became one of the most celebrated writers in the country, was proud to see how her projects helped discover new talent and make literature more accessible to all. She devoted her life to supporting young writers, giving them the opportunity to find their own voice. Her nonprofit Words for the World has helped hundreds of writers get their first publication, and the Literary Center has become a place where new stars have grown under the watchful eye of experienced mentors. One evening, at another literary festival, Mary spoke to a huge audience gathered in the historic hall of the Literary Center. She looked out at the people in the room, young writers, older mentors, family and friends, and felt that her work was not just about passing on knowledge, but about passing on a baton of dreams and hopes. "You are all part of a big story," Mary said into the microphone, her voice clear and moving. "Each of you is writing your own book, and it's not just words on paper. These are your dreams, your experiences, your strength. I was a part of this story, and now, together with you, we continue to create what will be left behind." After her speech, a young writer who had joined the Young Voices platform program just a few years ago took the stage. He was holding his new book, his debut novel, which was now on the shelves of bookstores across the country. Everyone applauded him, and he thanked Mary for her support, touched, as he did so. He was just one of many who had found their way because of her help. Mary smiled knowing that her mission was accomplished. She had seen new generations of writers grow up, her small town become the center of a large literary community, and realized that it was these stories, these words passed on, that had the power to change the world. A few years later, when Mary decided to take a break from full-time work at the center and the organization, she handed over its leadership to a new generation. The Literary Center remained true to its mission, and Jake Ryan's legacy lived on, inspiring more and more writers. Although Mary no longer ran the center, her life remained intertwined with its history. She continued to write books, but now with a special piece. She knew that her place in this world had been found, and that the stories she helped create would live on forever. And, like Jake, Mary understood one simple truth: stories, even the smallest and most insignificant ones, have incredible power. They can change not only the lives of individuals, but the whole world. That's why everyone who creates leaves their mark in this infinite space of time and possibilities. This is how Springfield became not only a city, but also a symbol of an endless stream of creativity, where everyone can find their star and share their story with others. And it is these stories, passed down from generation to generation, that have remained the greatest legacy of the Ryan family that will never fade away.